Approaches-SMTN.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome to Shin Megami Tensei Network Link 242 for a solo, I don't know how long this is going to be, lunch podcast with your host and only host, Spencer Presley. So, this episode's a little bit of a weird one for a couple of reasons. One, we're kind of stuck in between I'm playing nothing but SMT5 and I can't talk about it till like the 4th. This episode goes live for patrons at the beginning of the month. Will be live for everyone 2 days before reviews drop. And on the 4th of November, you'll hear probably a bajillion people talking about Shin Megami Tensei 5. So I decided let's make a shorter episode, talk about a couple of things. Previews dropped. I gave my preview impressions after like 10 hours or so. I'm 20 hours in now. And really, really excited. Now that I've got a lot of personal stuff in my life out of the way, I'm really, really going to be just nose to the grind playing this, going to be talking about it a lot with you. My goal and hope is once reviews and stuff drop, I would love to just kind of be that one-stop shop, or at least hopefully be able to answer as many questions for everyone as possible. One of the big things I want to try and do, hopefully maybe if not on Embargo Day, around embargo time, is basically I want to just kind of make a poll of just, hey, what are your questions? And even honestly with this, because, hey, there's no show notes here. This is an open kind of forum. If you guys have specific questions about SMT5 and you really want to get them answered, I'm going to try to maybe make the comments of this video be that spot, or even might just make like a Google form sheet or like a Twitter post or a Facebook post, so that way we have everyone covered. Because there's so many intricate aspects of covering SMT5, and what I thought was so funny looking at other previews was, no offense to all the other people out there, but it seemed so bare bones, not really in terms of what you could cover, because it was like, hey, you can talk about the opening of the game, but I don't know if it's just because there's been so long in terms of getting a real, just core SMT game, that like I thought so many of the previews I thought were so funny of just like, it just felt like baby's first description. Like it felt like a lot of them were like, here's the game, it's an RPG, there's demons, you negotiate, and not a lot of stuff coming from like a veteran's perspective. So I'm really, really excited to kind of dive deeper into that with everyone, answer a lot of those questions, because what I think is so funny is there's so many questions out there I would love to answer from like little things. Like I got someone last night on the Halloween stream was like, Spencer, can you explore the train station? And I'm like, man, that is so not a spoiler. Like, there's so many, like in like over 20 hours of playing, there's not been a moment where I'm like, oh, geez, better not talk about this game. There's a bad twist coming or whatever. Like, all the things that I've even been kind of more intrigued by. Like, I remember one of the big surprises I had when my first 10-hour preview went up. I was really surprised that people kind of latched onto this online of, oh my god, there's no dungeons, or if this game doesn't have dungeons, it's gonna suck, in a traditional sense, and like puzzles and things like that, of like things I don't necessarily think like, oh yeah, this like has to have a dungeon, this has to have a puzzle. Even though we've like talked about it with the open world stuff before, it's been very interesting to see what maybe people in the media, or even myself included, and other creators and stuff out there, like, what do you think is important to cover is almost not always going to be what people out there want to hear about. People want to hear about things like the buffs. People want to hear about the demon voice acting in English. People want to hear about, like, the different intricacies of, like, hey, what's the frame rate like? How does it actually play? Because I think, like, putting it out there in a stat of being like, hey, frame rate's 30, it obviously can dip, it can sometimes go higher. That's not really that exciting unless you kind of dive deeper into the hows and the whys and the stuff like that. So I think honestly previewing this game is going to be almost as much fun, if not more fun almost, than reviewing it, because talking about my experience is great. I think what's more fun for me right now is I really just want to talk to you all and answer your questions. Like, I am dying to talk to you all about this more. And what's funny is, like, the embargo and stuff forward is, like, the last thing I want to talk about, honestly, is the story, which is not to say anything bad about the story, because guess what? The story's actually really good. Like, the more I keep playing the story, the more I'm like, hey, I like this. Hey, I like this. Hey, this is a lot better than, like, insert X game here. So the positive impressions just keep getting more and more positive. So, again, if you have a question once embargoes and stuff are out there, I will be all over the place. I will be answering people. I'll be making a ton of videos. This is basically going to be my baby for the next month. And I guess kind of going into show notes or whatever, one of my big goals I would like to have happen, I don't think it's going to happen, but mostly because I apparently set very high expectations for myself or whatever. I would love to get 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you know, this podcast goes live on YouTube. It posts on YouTube. I do editorials. I do reviews on YouTube. I do live streams. Blah, 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 blah. It would mean a lot to me as a, hey, isn't this a crazy goal I accomplished? If I could reach 5,000 subscribers before SMT5 is out. And I mean before as in I want to get up to 5,000, if not more, by November 10th, before that Japanese launch and then eventual worldwide launch on the 12th. So, if that could happen, that would be awesome. How can you help make that happen? Do you listen to this show on iTunes or Spotify or whatever and don't really care about the YouTube? Just check it out. Give it a subscribe. That's all I'm really asking for. I'm never really complaining about the watch numbers, because the fact that more than 5 people watch any of my stuff on YouTube, I am always appreciative of. So we're over 4,500. The hardest hump is pretty much been there. So if you could help make that happen by sharing the channel, talking about it, I'm doing tons of giveaways leading up to SMT5. Like, we have one going right now from the last podcast about a copy. So anything you can kind of do to spread the word of the podcast to help me reach 5,000, I think that'd be really, really cool. I don't know what I'll do if I get to 5,000 early. I don't know if that would be like a thing of, do I celebrate or do I like then do a crazy giveaway? Something like that. So hard to say, but it's a personal goal of mine I would like to will into existence, and if you can help me will that into existence, it would mean a whole heck of a lot to me. So, let's talk about SMT5 previews. So yeah, previews, I'm actually surprised how little attention they've gotten. I'm like, okay, there's like obviously a lot of games going on right now. Like Call of Duty is about to come out this week. People have been reviewing 1,000,001 games. I think I'm just more surprised that the big sites haven't really given it a lot of attention. Like, you're not seeing GameSpot talk about it. You're not talking about IGN really talk about it. And even on YouTube, it's pretty much a handful of channels. Like, there's a reason my video, even though it is unlisted, still up. Even though, like, my video is still there and able to watch, like, it's gotten almost 4 times as many views, like, after I locked it away than it did when it was live, because people are hungry. People want to have information on this. And I find it funny of, like, a lot of the channels, and especially the Nintendo ones, because this is a big Nintendo exclusive, it's really been funny of, like, watching the coverage of being like, this is looking like a solid RPG, and then, like, the stuff I want to kind of get into is nowhere really to be seen. And obviously, people want to talk about the story. You're not going to talk about the story in a preview. You can only really talk about the opening of the area, and you also can't show anything. You can only do screenshots. I'm sure a lot of those caveats kind of deterred people from wanting to show stuff off. So maybe the restrictions in terms of the preview might have had something to do with that. But honestly, even just like this, of just having a conversation, talking to fans, being like, hey, what do you want to know about this game, can go a really, really long way. And so hopefully that's not an indicative trend of the reviews. I hope that when the review embargo drops this week, there's a ton of reviews. I hope people have had enough time to really sink their teeth into it and talk about it and have a whole bunch of stuff for it. You'll see more reviews by quote-unquote content creator types on launch day. Basically, there's going to be a media and press embargo this week on the 4th. And then on launch day, you'll see all the streamers and other people and stuff who do that. They'll be dropping all their stuff on launch day. I think that's like a weird one of, like, splitting the embargoes. I know we've talked about this before with, I think, Royal and Strikers and Nocturne. Of, like, splitting the embargo, I kind of get from, like, trying to draw out your interest and hype and whatever. But, like, from my outside perspective as someone who enjoys taking in all this information and stuff, and also from all of you out there, if it's launch day, like, and I might be in the minority, please let me know. If it's launch day, and Jimmy Joe Bob or Sally Who Knows What has a 5-hour-long epic review about their impressions of the game, even if it's spoiler-free, I have zero interest in watching that, because guess what? The game's out. Like, similarly with the trailer that dropped last week, I have this game. Like, why would I want any chance of this being spoiled for me now? I'm just going to jump in blind and kind of take it off there. Whereas when you're talking about, like, previews, there's that thing of, like, hey, the game's not out yet, so I'm talking to people who don't have this game. Like, once it's out, the discussion's going to be very different of, like, right now, I can talk to maybe, like, I think I know 10 people who have this game, in terms of reviewing it and covering it. I can talk to those 10 people, but even that, I'm hopping in and out very loosely because we're all playing at different speeds. I'm 20 hours in, I know people who are 80 hours in. So it's one of those interesting things of, like, the discussion really evolves and morphs over time, but right now we're in that space where people have a lot of questions. People don't want to be spoiled, but people want to have questions of, like, how does this feel? Will I like this? How does this sound compared to this? Do I like this if I don't like this? So those kind of questions have been really fun to kind of dissect, and I'm really, really excited to get into it. I hope the reception is good. From everything I've played, by the way, just because this is a weird time capsule, reviews aren't out yet, but I have no idea what my final review will be, let alone other people. I will be amazed, like absolutely amazed, if this is lower than an 80 on Metacritic and OpenCritic. Like, if this somehow just, if this, like, lands in, like, the mid to high 70s, I will be so shocked. Because everything of, like, every time I touch this game, I feel like I'm a broken clock to my, like, wife. I'll look at her and be like, look at this game! Look how cool this is! I'll be like, look at this little fun feature, look at them doing this. Like, all my complaints are so minuscule and stuff so far, and I always, like, I love talking about them of, like, just the tiniest dumb little things of, like, honestly, I think I was telling a friend of mine today, my biggest complaint with the game is not even anything about the game, so I feel confident saying it. My biggest complaint is that I hate playing it in portable mode, not because of how it plays, not because of performance, literally because it looks so beautiful on my TV that I'm like, I'm disrespecting the game by playing it on the, whether it be a OLED, a light, or a handheld, like, regular launch Switch. I'm like, this thing looks beautiful on my 60-plus inch OLED TV. Like, I absolutely love this thing, how it looks. So, even just dumb little stuff like that. But, yeah, I hope I'm right. I would be so heartbroken if when this comes out, people are like, it's okay. It's okay game. Because, like, if that's the case, I will be so in the minority of, like, this thing is just, the more I play this, I'm like, I love this. It's like, I'm at a, oh my god, I waited this long, like, food buffet, and it's, I haven't been this happy playing a game in a very, very long time, in terms of hype, anticipation, build-up, release. It's here. I'm not feeling negative about, like, other dumb little aspects, whether it be something like marketing or whatever, so everything's coming up Millhouse, everything's coming up Nahabino. I'm really, really excited, and I'm so glad everyone else is excited. Like, the hype on Twitter, the hype on Facebook, the hype on YouTube, it's been so nice. Just getting closer and closer to launch. Also, talking about launch, I want to give a little bit of a heads up. So next week's podcast probably will be a review breakdown of, like, talking about other people's reviews. I think at that point I might be able to get some other people who've been playing it to talk about it. But the plan is for right now, 2 weeks from now, on the 10th, on YouTube, will be a live marathon-a-thon of pre-launch party. I am going to, for as long as I humanly can, because it's my day off, and I have nothing better to do, have a Shin Megami Tensei 5 launch party, and my plan is to have as many guests as humanly possible show up, maybe for 5 minutes, maybe for 10 minutes, and this could be a thing of maybe we do a town hall in and out, maybe I take a lunch break, but this is just going to be a live stream of, hey, the game is not out yet, anywhere, This is our last chance. Let's get together. Let's reminisce. Let's talk about the journey. This is a big step. I made a tweet today, and I made a little like dumb video for it. But I was like, this is crazy to think like this journey of this game we knew was existing around 2016, saw barely a teaser in 2017, and it's like it's here. It's a game. It's in my hands. It's going to be in your hands soon. It's just really, really crazy, and I want to just make this like a special launch party, not really almost about the game, but more just kind of about all of us and talking about, hey, what were you doing in 2016 compared to now? Like how different my life was, and just those couple of years leading up to launch. So I'd love to hear from everyone about that. More details about who's going to come, when that's going to be. Just basically expect day before launch, Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. SMTN pre-launch party for SMT5. I'm sure it'll have a terrible title, but I hope you're excited. I'm really excited for it. It's going to be a big thing for me of like, I really, really want to kind of celebrate this game coming in with as much of a bang as possible. But, yeah, so that's kind of it in terms of what I wanted to talk about. Talking about review embargoes coming up soon. Talked about previews. Trying to think about other stuff for what else I might want to kind of cover. So I asked patrons because I was like, hey, this is going to be a weird week. I know I'm not going to do a live show. I wanted to get patrons something early and other things like that. So basically I got 2 questions here from patrons because I was like, hey, I know if I just do an open call for questions, it would be a flood, and I have to actually get back to playing this thing and also get back to work because I'm an adult, hypothetically. So I have 2 questions here. First one is by Solaire, who was recently on the Patron Town Hall. So thank you so much for commenting, Solaire. Solaire's main question is, some outlets recently noted in their pre-reviews how bare-bone the story and plot is or seem to be compared to something like Persona 5 or Royal. Depending on how far you are in the game as a Mega 10 veteran, how would you rate that in the aspect? So I will say, I've been like dipping into the previews, but I haven't really, because it's like I haven't. I don't really want to have my opinions tainted by maybe someone else, whether I agree with them or disagree. But in that aspect, I think it's really, really crazy, because for me, especially coming off of something like Royal and dipping back into Nocturne earlier this year, I think the story has above and beyond exceeded my expectations in every aspect of like, it's a larger cast. There's not just, I'm the good guy, I'm the bad guy, I'm the neutral guy. The cast of characters feel really real. They all have a reason to be existing in the world. You see them constantly in a way that makes sense, but they are not part of your party. They really knew what they're doing, and like the story from where I'm at, even as early on as I am, it just gets stronger and stronger. I'm liking these characters way more than I thought. No one has really stood out to me, with one key exception, which I don't think would be that hard to kind of suss out. But this is a character who's also, like, they're very plot-heavy, I'm sure, but they're not, like, ironically, a character you spend a large amount of the second map is like, oh, cool, this character's along the ride with me. No input. Other characters you don't get to hang out with, way more input in it, so It's very uneven in that aspect for that one specific character, but a lot of that I think is plot reason, so I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. That's going to be one that kind of goes along for it. But everyone else, whether it be side stories, demons, things like that, really, really strong story. Like, it's got really, really solid roots, good foundation, and just keeps building and building in terms of making me excited. Also, I will not skip this one, Solaire. So talking about the Tree of Knowledge here, there are different staircases. It's really funny. I was looking at that through different trailers because they've used that knowledge, that like tree basically with the staircases coming up to them. You'll see it also like when you die, and I thought it was interesting of like, do the staircases maybe hint to the routes and stuff for it? So it's hard to say because it's very ethereal in terms of what I've seen from it so far, but I would say the game has actually been very kind of subdued in terms of your choices don't really feel like black or white. Like, even if you're siding with the angels, or if you're siding with the demons, or if you're siding with neither, the game is very much not like, they'll remember this, be careful about this choice. So a lot of it, I think, is stuff working under the hood. I don't know how many actual effects that has. I haven't really seen the total effects of, hey, if you do this quest but not this quest, this person doesn't do this. So have to do a little bit more digging in that aspect. I do know how many endings there are, though, so it is definitely a thing of, hey, your choices do matter. There are multiple endings. Everything does have consequences. I'm sure it just varies in different aspects. So good questions there. Next one and last one is by X8, who says, from some early gameplay footage shown, it seems like the buff system may have changed to be like Persona. Increase attacks for 3 turns, buff someone for 3 turns, debuff someone for 3 turns. How does it feel compared to previous systems? I think, honestly, for me, all of the gameplay changes, there's none I'm not a fan of. I think the way they've implemented press turn is really, really good. I think the buffs and debuffs have been nice. I even think other aspects, like people were really worried about, of light and darkness doing damage, but maybe not always doing insta-kill. Kind of getting that, taking a little bit of the randomness aspect and just changing it. Not making it easier or harder, per se. I think all the gameplay additions have just been really, really good and are always keeping me on my toes. Like, one I'm really excited to talk about more that I think it is a harder conversation to have without other people really checking on it, and this is definitely very much an opinion, is I like the direction they took negotiating with the demons. It doesn't feel easy. It doesn't feel impossibly hard, but I think they finally struck that balance of, it's not something you can just go to a list and be like, oh, this is the question, make sure you get this answer. Every demon has multiple kind of phases and things that they could say to you. Like, even if you just lose, go to the same demon, ask it another question, it has a good flow to it. I really, really like it, and I think demon negotiation is one of those really hard things that it can't be easy, because then it's not satisfying, but will it be satisfying if they're really, really hard to get over to your party? Things like that. That kind of goes back into balance of other things we'll talk about later, but yeah, so really, really excited, guys. I know this has been like a kind of a shorter one compared to how many of the longer episodes of the podcast we have, but hopefully the bit of a show note update, me talking here on my lunch break, gave you a little bit of an update. I hope you're excited. Thank you, car horn. Yep, there you go, popping up on the line there. So, the car horn apparently means it's time for me to leave. So, car horn has decided my fate. But before I go, I do want to thank you all so much again for listening to this podcast. We will be back for a much meatier podcast next week. I don't know why I was blanking on that one for so long. Alright, so as we're wrapping up the show, I would like to remind you all once again, please check out the YouTube channel. Please consider helping out, subscribing to the channel, and helping me get to 5K before SMT5 comes out. That's my personal goal to myself. We're going to try and will that into existence and not cry about it if it doesn't happen. Check out the Facebook group. Check out Twitter at SMT Network. Check out the podcast on iTunes. Please consider giving reviews anywhere else you check out podcasts. And if you like the show and just want to help basically keep it going along, get the show early, have extra perks, exclusive giveaways, stuff like that, please consider going to patreon.com/SMTN. That's patreon.com/SMTN. You can sign up for 2 different tiers. There is the executive producer tier, which basically if you give $5 or more a month, you get a shout out on every episode as long as I remember, or we're not doing a live show and things are getting rushed along. If I ever forget, know that I am eternally feeling like a POS and still love you all so much. But shout out to all the executive producers, such as Jag, Patrick, Philip, Solaire, and just thinking of people's names here, Goro and Robert. Thank you all so much. I really, really appreciate all the support. And also, if you can't or just maybe aren't able to do the executive producer tier, there is a single $1 tier if you are an SMTN fan. That gets you the show early, that lets you comment, that lets you get those exclusive perks. Like I said, a penny, $1, any amount you feel comfortable with, I promise everything really, really helps, and it's always super appreciated. So to all of the new patrons or old patrons, I appreciate you all so much. Everyone who's listening to this podcast, I appreciate you all so much. Thank you all. SMT5 is almost here. I was going to lie to myself and say I'm going to edit this podcast and then have time on my lunch and go play a little. I definitely will not. The podcast comes first because I gotta get this out every week. I gotta have something for you all to listen to because God knows no one else is gonna do a weekly SMT podcast. At least not this long. So, yeah, thank you all again so much. Enjoy the show. Let me know what you think. I'll see you all online. Have a good rest of your week. See you all. Bye.